Everyone, and welcome to LA Rams Central. This is the 9th edition of LA Rams Central. I want to appreciate all the feedback that I got for my question. I'll get into that a little bit. We're going to cover a little bit of the current Ram news, which there isn't a lot to report, although some free agents have signed that I'm going to make note, more like re-signs rather than free agent signs. Kind of what the Rams are doing. The draft is approaching, and we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. And then I'm going to wrap it up with a little bit of fandom, which I have some big breaking news for the fandom. So I hope you guys stay tuned. The 10th episode is definitely going to be a big episode. Before I get into any of that, let me just go ahead and start the first part of this episode. And I want to talk a little bit about what the Rams have done. So a few things have bothered me, but I'm not going to get overworked about it. A couple of guys I really want to see the Rams get. Bruce Irvin, gone. Grimes from the Dolphins just signed with the Buccaneers today. He's gone. I really wanted the Rams to get, or take a look, I should say at least, at some secondary guys that have now come off the board. So it's been frustrating. Brock Osweiler did what I said Brock Osweiler should do. He bolted and left for Houston. And I got to go off on a little bit of a rant here. I don't understand everybody saying that, they don't understand what he was thinking. Why would he leave the great Denver Bronco defense? Dude, Denver's D isn't going to be as good this year. They lost Malik. They lost Trevathan. And they lost a couple of key guys in their secondary. This isn't the same defense. And it's not like he left Denver's great defense and went to, the worst team in the National Football. He's not on the Browns. He signed with Houston, who arguably has the second best defense in all of the National Football League. So I don't understand that. The only reason Houston didn't do anything in the postseason last year was because they didn't have a quarterback. Now they do. And watch Houston run the table. Now, I'm not saying they're going undefeated, but they're going to be back in the playoffs next year, and they're probably going to make a deep run. I'll get to that when I cover Houston in a few weeks, more like a month or so, a few months. But I don't understand it. Good job for you, Houston, in getting him. I was hoping the Rams would make a push for him, but apparently they feel like Case Keenum is Joe Montana. He's definitely going to be their starter, it looks like, from everything I'm reading. No effort to going after a free agent, and they're going to sit still, it looks like. Unless the Rams are keeping this close to the vest, I'm really irritated. But at the same time, I'm not irritated. I'll get to that later. But good job for you, Houston, in getting Brock Osweiler. And good job for you, Brock, for not staying. I am disappointed in Brock Osweiler, though. I'm disappointed in his conference, or his I don't know what you want to call it, contract acceptance speech in Houston, where he's giving nothing but praise to the Denver Broncos. That organization bent him over the rails and dragged his face through the mud and then expected that he would just be fine signing. But let me tell you what I mean. Number one, the first thing they did is they benched him at halftime against San Diego for a quarterback who has no arm. And then got damn lucky that their defense was able to carry that much weight on their shoulders and carry, because if Brock Osweiler was starting against Pittsburgh and New England, that they probably would have had 30 or 40 points on the board. I mean, they would have rolled in those two games. Instead, they limped through barely into and through the Super Bowl. So that was, strike two. And then in my opinion, strike three is saying that, we're going to give Brock, middle-class money because he's a middle-class quarterback and he hasn't really done anything. And, we're going to go ahead and give him middle-class money and he's going to accept it. You didn't get Peyton Manning his rookie year middle-class money. Granted, things were different back then. First-round picks got paid a heck of a lot of money. But no one complained when you went and got Peyton Manning off the free agent market for an exorbitant amount of money. And at that point, he was an ailing quarterback with a lot of health issues and question marks. And all he did for you was enable you to get to a Super Bowl and then do what Peyton Manning always does, which is choke. And then your defense carried him across the finish line 2 years later. So I don't know what Denver was thinking. Denver's going to be a mess this year. I don't even think they're going to make the playoffs. But good for you, Brock, for walking away from that catastrophe. So I'm stoked for him. Now, enough about other teams. This is current Ram news. So the Rams did sign Greg Zuerlein. They re-signed him. I'm a big fan of Legatron. The guy can kick accurately from 50 yards, 60 yards out. It definitely puts the team in a different mindset when you're in field goal range as soon as you're at the opponent's 48-yard line. Like, that does a lot for your offense to kind of relax and go, whew, which could help their quarterback situation, which I'll get to in a minute. And then obviously Tremaine Johnson got franchise tagged. They re-signed a couple of guys like Haynes, and some other people. So, the Rams at least have re-signed some key players of their own. I don't like the fact that we re-signed Haynes, but we let Chris Long go. I don't like the fact that we re-signed Alex Barron, a safety that we're going to turn into a linebacker, and let Laurinaitis go. If the intention wasn't to free up money and go get somebody big time, then I have to say I really don't understand this pick. The only thing they did right is they let Janoris Jenkins go. The Giants can have that headache that they're about to find out that he's got a lot of talent and potential but doesn't ever really measure up to it. So I'm not worried about that. Trey Mason gets arrested in a job. So he's arrested for resisting arrest, essentially. He was going 35 miles over the speed limit in Hollywood, Florida, not once, but twice, and then actually sped away from the police. I think it might have even been 3 times. And then decides the only reason he's going to stop for the police is because his vehicle gets blocked. And then proceeds to resist arrest and get tased. So as far as I'm concerned, that's enough for me. Mason should be cut. I mean, he was a bottom-dwelling, money-sucking, hit-against-the-cap piece of crap anyway, who didn't really produce last year. So why keep people like that on our team? I don't know. For all I know, next the Rams are going to go after Greg Hardy. Watch. So Mason hopefully is gone. That'll free up some more money from the cap, probably about 88 cents. It's about all he's worth anyway. Coming out of college, he wasn't that good. So he's hopefully gone, and that'll open up some momentum. Benny Cunningham might be getting signed by the New England Patriots, which is another big relief right there, because Benny Cunningham had moments that he was good, but I'm a Rams fan since 1984. I have expectations out of my running game. And when your backups are the likes of a Cleveland Gary, or Robert Del Pino, a Charles White, you expect more from your backups than what we got. So we need to upgrade the running back position behind Todd Gurley. So, God forbid he goes down with an injury, we have somebody who's at least a professional level talent to replace him. Because right now we don't. So, we'll see what happens when those guys split. There's a couple of free agents I want to talk about really quickly. Eric Weddle is still on the board as a safety. Russell Okung is still on the board, although there's other teams that have shown interest in him, and so far the Rams have not reached out to him. I don't know why. You can't possibly be satisfied with your offensive line play, can you? I mean, as I said, you move Saffold to guard and you plug him in there. You still keep the core of your offensive line, but they haven't done that. Andre Smith is still available. No one's reached out to him. Donald Penn is still available from Oakland. No one's reached out to him. Those are all linemen, by the way, Okung, Smith, and Penn. Rashard Johnson, I've heard that name being bantered around, former Cardinals safety. I think that could help the Rams a little bit, provide some leadership and some depth to the defense. Leon Hall is a corner from Cincinnati that I would love to see the Rams get. Zach Miller, tight end out of Chicago. I mean, why not? The guy caught 957 yards and 13 touchdowns against us when we played him earlier in the year. It might behoove us to go get him. We lost Cook. We don't have a tight end. You can't possibly tell me that Harley and Kendricks, you're good. Like, that's the plan. You're just going to go in with those guys and say, yeah, we're set. Again, not pro talent. I mean, this is the problem we're running into with the Rams. They think because they have a good defense, and I do say good, not great, that's good enough. That's just going to carry us to the Super Bowl. Well, you let go of 2 major parts of that equation. I would argue 3 because, I'm not a fan of Janoris Jenkins, but he's certainly better than nobody. There's Leon Hall, pick him up. You got a better corner situation. At least improve something. I know it's early, but we're running out of days here. So I hope the Rams get it together and at least make a play on somebody to improve their football team. And Zach Miller even would be a welcome addition there. RG3. I like RG3. I won't have a problem if we sign him. It's a backup plan in case no quarterback is there where we're drafting. I don't know why the Rams seem to think that their feet are stuck in mud and they can't move from the 15th position. And it's not like they don't have pieces they can give up. Future draft picks, a second-round pick. They already have 2. There's room to wiggle there. Just jump up 5 spots. You'll get your quarterback. It's not hard. So, again, I'm losing not just faith, but confidence in Captain Hairdo by the day. Like, Atlanta got rid of you for a reason, Snead. You're not making us better. In fact, you're making us worse. So, do something to remedy this situation. We need help everywhere on offense. That's what free agents for. You can only get one guy at a time in the draft. It's not like you can go, we'll draft all the wide receivers with our first pick. Doesn't work that way, Les. You got to get something out there. Find them. There's 100 people out there right now in free agency. And about 95 of them will make your football team better. So can we please go get somebody? Anybody. Move! It's my rant on that. I've given a list of names. In every instance, they will improve either your offensive line, your secondary, your tight end situation, and yes, I dare say, even the quarterback situation. Because 3 potential starters competing for the starting job is infinitely better than 2 guys competing for the starting job. And again, I'm not going to repeat my feelings on Case Keenum. The dude went 3-1, and his 3 wins, 1 was okay. I'll give him that. It was Seattle. That was an impressive win. But Nick Foles beat Seattle too. So that's a wash. You beat Detroit, you beat Tampa, and you got smoked by San Francisco. I remind you, Nick Foles smoked the 49ers. And he beat the Cardinals. Stick that in your pipe and smoke it for you non-Foles supporters. So that whole situation needs to get remedied. I'm going to wrap up this situation or this part of the show with this because I think it's important. So I asked the question, Case Keenum, Nick Foles, who would you rather see? It appears, believe it or not, at least the people that responded, I would say it's 50-50. 50 are fine no matter what choice the Rams go, thinking neither one's really the option. That the Rams are going to have to make do with what they've got, basically. The other 50% kind of are with me, saying give Nick another chance. 1 season, let's see what he does this year. Let him compete for the job. Give it to him if he earned it, and let it ride. And I think that's the way to go. I don't think Case Keenum is a backup quarterback in the professional football ranks. I think he's a nice third stringer. He can hold a clipboard, and he's, God forbid you're in an emergency, you can play him for a game and hope that your backup recovers. Because when the Houston Texans, I keep saying this, when they let him go and they had all of their quarterback problems, that should tell you something. Like, he wasn't good enough to beat out Hoyer or the other guy, I don't even know his name now off the top of my head, that played for him. Like, he's not that good. And the Rams go, yeah, he's our starter for the future. So, again, Les, move. We'll get to segment 2 next. So, another team that I wanted to cover, we've been hitting one each conference, one each division. We're going to hit the Arizona Cardinals next. And then in 2 weeks, I'll jump over and I will cover the debating on whether or not it's going to be the Jets or the Dolphins, because there's been a lot of movement with both those teams. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks with them. Once I get through, I'm going to start elevating this pretty quickly. Actually, when I get to the AFC, I'm going to cover 2 teams. I'll probably either cover the Dolphins and the Jets, or the Dolphins or the Jets, and somebody from the... Actually, that's what I'll do. I'll cover either the Dolphins or the Jets, and then somebody from the AFC North. Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, depending on the situation. And it's good to depend when news breaks. It's worth reporting. So, again, I'm not doing predictions for the season. I'm just kind of saying what teams probably should need or get, and then obviously report their free agent moves if that has happened, which, unfortunately for the Arizona Cardinals, they're kind of in the same boat as the Rams. They re-signed Stanton and a couple of their own guys, but they haven't got after anybody. Now, they made a real hard push for JPP, and that didn't go through. He wanted to stay in New York. To the Cardinals' credit, though, they did get one of the safeties from the Chiefs. Not Cherry. I can't remember the guy's name. Cherry was back when I was a kid. But they picked up a safety, but it's mostly for depth purposes and allows them to either get rid of Rashard Johnson or Powers or both, depending on what they do with their money that they still have coming up. But the Cardinals really desperately need a pass rusher. And they need an edge rusher, and they need no line, and they need a DB. If they can get somebody to complement Patrick Peterson of the Cardinals, the DB, if they can get him some help on this side that's even comparable, I'm not asking to be as good, but comparable, that could really put the Cardinals over the top. And of course, the Cardinals are coming off the NFC Championship game appearance where they got destroyed. But I thought they played, well going up to that. And 13 wins was a franchise record. And, their quarterback picked the worst time of the year to play his worst game of his career. But I think ultimately it's a step in the right direction, and they still have time. So, again, I'm not a Cardinal fan, but I live here, so I hear a lot about it. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the Cardinals, only because most of the people watching this probably live here. Well, it's probably not true at all with it being YouTube. So, essentially, there's a lot of optimism here in Arizona for the Arizona Cardinals and what's coming up down the pike. There's some expectations. They're going to make some moves on some guys coming up. They're going to try to lock up some of their own guys, which they've done, but they're going to try to lock up a few more. And they're really going to make a push for a pass rusher either in the free agent market, and if that doesn't work, then they're going to use the draft to supplement what they didn't get in the free agent market that they needed to get. There's some talk of them getting maybe a lineman, and actually Donald Penn has been bantered around here, which I think would be a good fit for the Cardinals, but they've got some young offensive linemen they're going to put their stock into and wait and see, and ultimately we'll have to wait and see. With the Falcons picking up Mack, that really kind of threw a monkey wrench, I think, in both what the Rams and the Cardinals wanted to do, because I know the Rams were considering looking at, a center or guard in this free agent pool. Although I think they need to look at tackle and maybe move Saffold back to guard, because he had his best year as a pro when he was playing guard, not tackle. So I think even though he doesn't like the position, I think that's a place for him to go. The Cardinals are in a rough situation, though. I mean, they've got to address these needs, and they're running out of money. Essentially, they're not running out of money, but they're running out of options, because the one thing Klein won't do is overspend on a guy that doesn't earn it. And they had a very select pool of people they were looking at, and that pool is quickly getting gobbled up. So now they're going to the second tier, and Klein usually doesn't mess around with the third tier until the season is nearly starting, and then he can give some one-year contracts for under $1 million and save money on the cap that way. That's how we got Dwight Freeney. So a lot of optimism in Arizona, because we know our GM here knows what he's doing, and that goes a long way to give you some confidence. Unlike our team here at LA Rams Central, where we don't have a lot of confidence in our GM because he hasn't shown any kind of ability outside of the draft. I'll give him credit where credit's due. He's had some pretty good drafts, even though I've questioned him pretty harshly. They've turned out for the most part. But outside of the draft, he really hasn't done much. And considering that he's had so many high picks and so many opportunities, the problem is he's addressed the same side of the ball so many times and the same position. I mean, we're kind of the laughing stock, guys. We're doing with the D-line what the Lions did with wide receiver for a while there. And, yeah, we got our Calvin Johnson and Aaron Donald, but the problem is I'm hearing rumors might be going after a D tackle. And let's face it, his ability to draft a wide receiver has been pathetic. Pathetic. He passed on Malcolm Floyd. He didn't make an effort to get the kid in Jacksonville when we had an opportunity to draft him. He drafted Sam Bradford instead of getting Ndamukong Suh, which could have solidified the line problem right there. It's a mess. But in Arizona, they're very confident in their GM, in the way he's doing things. And people are feeling pretty optimistic here. So, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But again, I think the Cardinals need to address in the free agent market. I think they do need to address a pass rusher, even if it's a depth guy, and then they can get draft a veteran guy, and then draft a young stud and see how they kind of work together and what the dynamic there could be. But there's so much talent still out there, especially in the secondary, that the Rams and Cardinals both essentially. But we're talking about the Cardinals right now. They need to move, and they need to get one of these guys that's out there. They really wanted Janoris Jenkins, it sounded like, but he ended up going to the New York Giants for, a lot of money, and that's fine if that's what they wanted to do. You wanted to leave LA and go to New York. It's not like he left one big market to go to a smaller market for more money. He left a big market that was about to go to a bigger market. I hate to say it, but New York is, for more money. So the Giants are spending, and we'll get to that in a few weeks too, I'm sure. But that's kind of where the Cardinals' needs are. Now, there is some rumors that the Cardinals are going after Zach Miller to address the tight end position. So if they were able to do that, that could really bolster both their line play because he's a good run blocker, having been in Pittsburgh and Chicago. But he's also a good pass receiver, as we all know, being Ram fans. So that's the news with the Arizona Cardinals. Not a lot to report. Seems to be the case with both these teams. Hopefully in 2 weeks I will with the Dolphins or the Jets. Because the Jets had a big sign. I'll have a lot more time then to talk about people that are actually going places. And hopefully the Rams will have some moves by then as well. So that's it for the Cardinals section. We'll jump to the Rams and the fandom section of the show next. So we're going to hit the third part of the show here, fandom. And I want to take a little bit of time to talk about a rumor that I saw last week. Might have even been Friday before I did the show, but forgot about it or it was inconsequential enough to talk about. Because right now, it was a one-time blurb, and I don't know how much validity it has. But there could be something more in the works. So what I saw was that the Rams were actually considering, there was talks of them trading Nick Foles to either Dallas or Miami. Now, what would be really interesting there is if they were willing to trade them to one of those teams and their first-round pick for their first-round pick, so they could move up a little bit higher in the draft and maybe finally get their quarterback. So that's been bantered around a little bit, but I don't know how true it is or how legitimate it is. But I did see it, and I did want to report it to you guys because I think it is interesting. So there's that news. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about was RG3. A lot of people are hating on RG3, and they say he's washed up and that he's garbage and he's this and that. And it's the same reason I'm not willing to give up on Nick Foles. It's too early in his career to determine that, number one. There's definitely a need to improve. I won't argue that. That's unarguable. So with that being said, yes, I do like RG3. I like RG3 better than Johnny Manziel, because he's got all kinds of problems off the field that you just don't need to deal with, considering you're moving to LA and you're going to have enough distractions there. Don't get him. He's way better than Ryan Fitzpatrick. I'm sorry, but Ryan Fitzpatrick's a joke. He had one good year, and he had a receiver that he could just lob it up to and pray that he caught his awful passes. The Rams don't have anything of the sort. Nothing. So he's just going to throw it up, and other teams are going to pick it off while the receivers go. So, no. The only other option out there is Colin Kaepernick, and I prefer RG3 over Colin Kaepernick just because I think the skill set is a little better, and I think he's gone through enough emotional ups and downs, and people have kind of dragged him through the mud, I think, enough that I think the man check has happened, and I think his character, which was questioned, and he seems to be a pretty bright young man, might be in the forefront here to go, okay, I learned my lesson, now I'm just going to be a team player and learn. And he's not pushing to be a starter, which makes it even better because it makes for a great backup if we get a quarterback in the draft I just think it's a good option for the Los Angeles Rams, but whether or not they actually pull the trigger on it, we'll have to wait and see. I know many of you are probably going to disagree. RG3 is a very polarizing character. And there's no guarantee, and I'm aware of that he's even going to produce. It could be a total flop or bust, but the risk-reward is there, and the reward is pretty great, and the risk is pretty great. So it's really a question of, is it going to improve your football team? And I think unequivocally, when you look at Case Keenum and Nick Foles and you look at the Rams organization, I think unequivocally we can all agree it's going to be an improvement. Even if he's at his worst, he's going to be no worse than Case Keenum or Nick Foles. Although I think Nick Foles could be better. And I think he will be better if they just give him an opportunity. But I keep saying that. And it sounds like, God, I'm a diehard Nick Foles fan. Guys, I'm just as pissed as you at the season he had last year. It was such a disappointment. He was such a disappointment. But coming at it from a coach's perspective, for those of you that don't know, I used to coach for 16 years. At the high school level, ranging from freshman to varsity. Spent 5 years at Chandler Prep. I've seen good quarterbacks. I've seen great quarterbacks. I've seen bad quarterbacks. I've seen guys that didn't have a snowball's chance in Hades of ever being a successful quarterback. And people getting all hung up on, hey, they got to play. This is the quarterback. He's great. And then you watch him throw pick, incompletion. You're going, really? What am I seeing that you're not? Because this guy can't complete anything. So I didn't see that with Nick. There was effort, there was talent, there was ability. Some of it was confusion for the new system. Some of it was just that he has no talent around him outside of the running back, which, of course, is Todd Gurley. And what do you do when you're getting your butt hammered back there by on-rushing pass rushers because your line can't protect him? And then you have a GM that goes, we're good on that side of the ball. We're not even going to address it. It's the quarterback's fault because our offensive line was abysmal. It was abysmal. Our receivers aren't even professional receivers. Like, they wouldn't be on most teams' practice squads. Like Kenny Britt would have been cut 5 years ago. In fact, he was cut 5 years ago. And the Rams went, he's a starter. It's worked out well for us. Quick, Givens, they're all gone. No one's took them. The guy we traded him to, I think the Ravens are going to end up cutting him anyway because they realized that guy's pathetic. I don't know what they were thinking. And they learned it. And then we've got Tavon Austin, a third slot receiver at best. A gimmick guy is our ace in the hole. We need help. So if we draft a receiver in the first round, I won't necessarily be upset. It'll tell me that the Rams are moving forward, hopefully, with a fair competition for one of these quarterbacks and at least give them some hope so maybe they can suck less. But RG3, I think, would be a good fit. So I want to make that point very clear. Now, that being said, I'm going to wrap up the show with this. I have some really big news. Huge news. I got Vince Ferragamo. For those of you that are Ram fans, you know the name. And for those of you that are young Ram fans that might not know the name, Vince Ferragamo was a quarterback of the Rams when they went to the Super Bowl in 79. He was a quarterback from 77 through 84. And then he went to Green Bay and played as backup behind Lynn Dickey for a little bit, played a little bit in 86 and then faded away. Of course, there was a gap there where he went to the Canadian League for 1 year in 81. But I got Vince Ferragamo. So I'm going to be interviewing him next week for the big unveiling 10th show, the 10th episode of LA Rams Central. I'm going to be interviewing for 30 minutes Vince Ferragamo. It's just going to be a couple of things here and there. I'm probably still going to break that up into 3 parts. The first part's going to be a little bit of a, how did you feel about the Rams going to LA? Introduce yourself. Tell us what you've been up to, catching up kind of thing. And then there's going to be 15 minutes of, what do you think the Rams should do? Do you like their chances of making the playoffs? What do you think of the team? And then 15 minutes of just some fun random questions of things in general, like, fun questions like, when you who was the biggest prankster on the team when you played? What was the guy that you knew was, when he was around, you had to double check some things to make sure that you weren't about to get pranked on. Just some fun stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about your teammates, and I'm going to ask some questions about Eric Dickerson and Jack Youngblood, just because I loved those guys growing up. But just going to be fun in general and informative and a real treat for all of us that are fans of the show, fans of the Rams, and I'm just so ecstatic for it. So look for that next week on LA Rams Central.